Hello everybody, my name is Will and welcome back to Flyout. Today we're back building a plane for the first time in what feels like a very, very long time. So I might be a little bit rusty, but we're going to be going for kind of an early World War II fighter if we can. And we're going to be designing this as kind of the next in line for our Chesford fighters. Previously, we built a biplane. We're going to try and make this quite a lot more modern than that. So fingers crossed we can pull off that kind of vibe without looking too late war. Think early Spitfire, Hurricane, BF-109 kind of territory. And yeah, without any further ado, I'm going to do my best. So wish me luck. And since I didn't take it upon myself to explain to those who don't know and are uninitiated what Chesford is and what Chesford means, that's the name of a fake country that we've been running with for a couple of these Flyout videos and a couple of Sprocket videos now. And generally speaking, I don't know if I'll go into full detail here. I'll probably throw a map on screen. There you go. There it is in the yellow. Very nice. But generally speaking, it's a nation in a fake world that I made on a fantasy map generator that I'm just kind of using to base a series of designs in some form of reality, and that just kind of puts them in place a little bit more. If you want to be a little bit of a nerd and take part in designing some lore information about some planes, whether it's the ones that I've built or ones that you've built, there is a channel in my Discord, which is linked in the description below, called Vehicle Lore, where you can do things like that if you are that way inclined. And yeah, just generally speaking, so far we've been going through the eras and we have designed a biplane, which was the very first Flyout video I did for Chesford. I designed a little tank, like a light tank thing, and I think was the armored car also Chesford? I can't remember. We then designed a biplane and a heavy bomber kind of thing, French bomber looking thing. And anyway, we're now taking a step into the equivalent of the 1940s by building a single-engined monoplane propeller-driven fighter. Now, originally this thing was going to be quite a lot more out there. You can see here I was going for a bit of an unusual design with the nose cone. To be entirely honest now, I'll just give you a bit of a spoiler. I got rid of that. I decided that I didn't like it, and we completely replaced it with a much more traditional front end, reminiscent of, to an extent, like the Key 84. I think the Key 94 as well. Rather Japanese looking from the front. Sorry, from the back, I would say, and the sides. From the front, it looks a little bit... It's got a little bit of Blackburn design influence. You might see what I mean when I built it, but if you've ever seen the Blackburn Skewer, it almost has a little bit of that vibe, except the Skewer is a lot more slab-sided than this thing is from the front. I would like to believe, at the very least. The Skewer is not the prettiest aircraft in the world. However, it does have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart because it's so unapologetically ugly, and that's incredible. I love Blackburn's aircraft because they never laid any pretenses on the table. They were just like, you know what? We're the guys who build the ugly planes. And this is me just tweaking how our cowling looks. At the moment, it looks really, really strange because it kind of shrinks towards the front. Generally, I decided that the fuselage was a little bit too thick, and I decided to bring it in, and I think it's not long now until I get rid of the weird front, like, twin cowling thing. You're gonna have to trust me that this thing gets a little bit better here, because there were parts on this design where I was starting to doubt that it would look any good, and here's me giving it a name. I didn't really know what to go with, so I decided to go with Kestrel in the end. The last one was called... You know what? I genuinely cannot remember what the last one was called. But... If you have a better name for this thing, or you think a name that would fit better, then feel free to let me know in the comments section below, and I might just pick one of those and replace it, because I'm not particularly set on the name Kestrel. It's not hugely inventive, and it's definitely been done before. Yeah, anyway, I did a lot of things on this aircraft for the first time. You can see me here throwing in a first iteration of a cockpit, which is designed how I kind of traditionally did it, and I don't know why, but this method that I normally use just was not playing ball. It was not coming out with the kind of result I wanted it to. You might be better at this than I am, and have a couple of tips that you could give me at this point, because yeah, it was not working. But yeah, I ended up going for a completely different design that I've never really used, like a different method that ended up in a different design that I've never really used before, which is I kind of made a vertical facing fuselage, designed that, and then built separate fuselages for the kind of metal frame, and that was okay, I guess. It worked, I think, a little bit better than this one did. I guess this one doesn't look horrific, but it was kind of this bit here where the edges just started going all kinds of wrong, and I just couldn't get them to go back, that I just decided to bin it all off and replace it with a completely different one. You can also see that it's kind of offset itself to the side, because when you rotate these segments, it just doesn't always particularly play ball. Yeah, here's me just trying to salvage it, but at this point I was pretty set that this thing was going to get replaced. and it did. So yeah, there you go. I can take some satisfaction in that. Look at how incredibly wrong that one went. Just watching myself shake the camera in frustration, but yeah, there you go. There's the new method that I was trialing out for this one, which, I don't know, maybe this is something you've used, maybe it's not, maybe it's a terrible idea, maybe it's a good idea. Who knows? To be honest, I'm still kind of learning this game. It did take me an incredibly long time to design this aircraft. I'd say, on average, like a design and sprocket, I can probably get done in 2 hours of overall building time, and in Flyout, I'm spending like 5-6 hours on these things in total, which is quite a lot larger of a time investment, which might a little bit reveal why I've done the community creations for Flyout and not Sprocket. Mostly time. I want to get Flyout content out, but I do not have enough time for a full build sometimes. But, you know, I just squeezed this one across 3 days. It's starting to look like a submarine at this point in time. So if anybody wants to design a submarine designing game, then I've already got, you know, a method of doing it well planned out. Just take this plane and yeah, that's a perfectly good submarine. Just drop it underwater, it'll be okay. That's definitely not the case in Flyout. I don't know if you've ever used the water physics in this game, but they go absolutely crazy as soon as you put the engines underwater. You launch into space at like Mach 4. If you've never tried it, give it a shot. It's great fun and awful at the same time. And there you go. So a little bit more about the plane and where we kind of got our inspiration from and ended up with. As I say, I kind of got inspired by Japanese designs. I was looking at, while building this, a picture of a Key 43 and a Key 44. Kind of taking bits and bobs from both. It's kind of the era that I wanted, more Key 43 than Key 44. But I wanted to do something a little bit different to them, generally. So I think it's quite a lot bigger than the Key 43. I'm not sure about the Key 44. Key 44 is always one of those planes that I can't quite get a measure of, because it feels like it should be a really, like, agile, tiny little fighter, but I don't think it is. If I know anything about my planes, it's a weird one. Not a very traditional Japanese aircraft in that sense of the word, but yeah, here I am putting the struts on the cockpit. This is something that I actually really, really like about this design. It's something I've never tried to do before, or done at all, is get this kind of 3D effect on these interior struts, which maybe they're a little bit too thick to be realistic, but I don't tend to put a lot of effort into the internals of my designs anyway. So for it to even be, you know, slightly looking good from an internal point of view is an improvement, in my opinion. And yeah, I think I'll probably try, whether it's through this kind of vertical cockpit method or whether I steal somebody else's method, which turns out to be better. I don't know, but I will probably try and do this in the future, just because I've heard it from other people as well. I'm not the only purple to say I'm not the only purple to say this, but It definitely helps kind of make it feel more real when you've not got paper thin metal in the middle of your aircraft for very, very little reason that doesn't look like it would stand up to the aerodynamic pressures of being at like 10,000 feet in the sky. And something else that I tried to do with this thing for the first time is I kind of tried to weather the paint. I didn't do any riveting. That's something that a lot of people do really, really, really well, and something that really makes design stand out to me, especially when I'm looking through the community build submissions for a set period. The ones that really have a lot of effort put into their paneling and their riveting, those are super cool, and I have so much respect for the people who have enough time in their day to do that, because I can't imagine there is an easy way of doing it. The painting in this game is, at the best of times, frustrating. At the worst of times, I just give up. But it's an early access game. It is what it is. If I had a couple of ideas that I would put forward, I would probably suggest having like a list of paints that you've used, which you can retroactively go and change. That would be super cool. Kind of how you can change the material on a fuselage after you've painted it. I know people kind of almost apply a wash to their aircraft with their weathering, and then use the base color to adjust the hue of it. That's kind of something a lot of people do to get around that, and that's kind of a mitigating factor, so that makes it a little bit less important. I'll probably try and do that in the future. It's just something that I didn't do while I was doing this. I trawled through the Discord of the official game. Sorry, that was a terrible way of saying it. I trawled through the official game's Discord looking for kind of tips and tricks that people have posted on painting in order to learn what I did when I painted this thing up. And you'll see, painting in this game is very much like fixing it in post. If there's any small errors, you can just kind of hide them with a paint job, which is lovely. And I definitely need to make more use of that, because I have a lot of small errors in my designs. And on the more suggestions that I have, yes, I did think of it'd be really useful if we had paint layers. I imagine it would be a bit of a challenge to actually implement, because you would have to have basically multiple textures with transparency, and then as you load them in, it would load in like 3 or 4 textures, which is going to have loading like delay times, especially if you have your parts set to like 4K textures or even 2K textures. They get pretty sizable. But it would be really nice to be able to like paint the underside of the aircraft with an entire layer, and then you don't have to worry about, like, when you're painting the top side, running over what you've already done and losing it, because there is no undo. There's no undo on your paint jobs. If you accidentally click and like it clips through and starts painting the other side of the fuselage that you're painting on, the other side of your fuselage is ruined, and you have to like go back and change it, and that takes a lot of time and gives me a lot of white hairs, to be honest, when I'm painting aircraft. And that would be super cool to see something along those lines. And obviously I'm still a bit of a proponent of the undo button, but it seems to be an unpopular one with the community, so I won't die on that hill. I'm fine without it, but God, I wish we had it. I am not good enough to not make mistakes, so I need somebody else to deal with my mistakes for me, and that somebody else is Stone. Stone being the developer of the game, if you don't know, not just some random guy called Stone, because that would be a little bit weird if I just called out a viewer. And we're putting in exhausts here. Somebody else pointed out when I posted this in the Discord that those exhausts are pointing right into the wings, which, now I think about it, yep, that doesn't really make any sense, so I do fix that. It was maybe a little bit of an oversight on my behalf, and I think, was it this late? I think this is about when I got rid of that double cowling on the front, which, to be honest, once I put in the propeller, it didn't look as bad as it did when I had no propeller in there, but it still doesn't look fantastic. So yeah, a little bit of work goes on there, and I think for the most part the overall profile of the aircraft is getting there. I did a lot of little tweaks as well after I finished recording, because I was tweaking the performance of the engine and all of the stuff that I don't show on camera because it's one of the more time-consuming parts for me, especially when I'm building a propeller aircraft. It takes a long time to get the kind of performance that you want, and I'm sure those people who are particularly bothered about a jet aircraft performing exactly right, I'm sure that they run into the same thing with a jet, but for me, normally my jets are like, yep, that performs well enough, I'll just go with that. But I find propellers, that they need to be really, really tweaked, otherwise they just don't work at all. And that is, it can be a multiple hours kind of process. Yeah, and in alongside that, what you end up doing is you end up tweaking how your wings look, tweaking how your tail looks, tweaking how your fuselage is shaped, just a tiny little bit because you notice something that's bothering you. And yeah, those don't get caught on recording, but rest assured they are happening. And actually, yeah, here's an interesting thing. I've not really done this before, but I wanted guns firing through this propeller hub here, so I cut out a little gap in between these two rings of the propeller hub and morphed it so that we could have little tiny holes where we're sticking our 50 caliber guns through. We got 2 of them here. It's not a particularly spectacular armament, but on a later version of this, I do upgrade this to 20 mils, which you will see towards the end of the video, which, yeah, helps a lot. And underneath here, I decided I would sling an intake. I kind of went... Boxy intake is very generic, and then at the back I stole from like the P-51, especially the early P-51, that kind of reverse exhaust at the back. I don't really know what to call it. And then something that you're not going to be able to unsee once I mention it is I move it slightly off to one side. There you go. It's ever so slightly to the left of the aircraft. And now that you know that, you're never going to be able to unsee that again. And yes, I did that just because I knew it would annoy you. So please, feel free, leave an angry comment down below. That's why it's there. It's engagement bait. That's how it works. Yeah, landing gear time. I don't know why I did the landing gear this way around. I really should have rotated them 180 degrees, but I just never did. I did on the other variant, but on this variant, the kind of strut is always in front, which means I have to have my center of mass further back and the wings further forward than is probably ideal. So that was a bit of a bad design choice on my behalf. I can't lie, but oh well. That's okay. I also didn't bother cutting out a gap for these landing gear to go into once they're retracted. It's not too bad on a jet where you've got, you know, the fuselage and it normally just morphs into the fuselage, but on a prop like this where it's meant to go into the underside of the wing, because I'm not doing fuselage wings on this design, you can't really do a cutout for the wheels. And I know a lot of people like do a fuselage wing, do a fuselage wing. Look, man, that takes a lot of time. But yeah, it's about done now. It's just the paint job to go. So I'll leave you here. And here we go. We have the roughly finished product. I don't know why I say roughly finished. This is all I'm going to do to this one. But yes, I have done a little bit of work since the end of the time-lapse. Most notably, I've painted it, and I also spent a very, very long time tweaking it to get it just about as good as I could in terms of performance. But I am not a wizard, so I don't know how propellers really work, so it's a bit of a guess. You might be able to do a better job with this thing downloaded. About 1160 kilowatts in this engine, so a reasonable amount of power, but nothing too crazy. And yeah, without any further ado, we'll give it a fly. Okay, we're at the default runway. I do have a couple of problems here from time to time taking off in monoplane prop fighters, so we'll see what we can do. I think mouse flight is probably the best way to go with this thing. If I pop the flaps to 2 there, we should not have too many problems. There we go, look at that, because this isn't an unstable mess like most of my planes are. So let me just get the trim right, and there you go. We're up quite comfortably, and we've got a fair bit of speed in this thing. It is not the fastest plane in the world. It is quite fat, to be honest. As you can see, the guy in there is looking pretty small. His legs don't really go down particularly far, but it's by no means huge. I'm pretty sure it's a fair whack smaller than like a P-47 is. Probably comparable to a... I want to say somewhat comparable to a Focke-Wulf, but it's probably longer. I don't know. In fact, I've not done the maths, but I'm sure it is a size, and that's for sure. And while the top speed might not be the greatest in the world, you can see the roll rate's okay, but the lateral turn times, when you just whack the elevator to full, are pretty good. I had to limit the amount of elevator authority that we actually had because it kept stalling itself out because it was turning a little bit too much. I also extended the wingtips a little bit to try and deal with that, but yeah, I'm really happy with this. We've definitely got a little bit of a Japanese vibe going on in terms of the overall design philosophy, but also when you look at it from this angle, it almost looks Blackburn. Maybe. You might disagree, you might agree. Feel free to let me know in the comments if you think this thing looks like something. I've been posting this in my Discord and the official Flyout Discord quite a bit, and I already have many opinions from different people what this thing looks like. So yeah, it seems to be a little contentious, but feel free to have your own contentious opinion. One thing I've struggled with getting my prop planes to feel good with is climb rate, so I'm just trying to get to the mountains to give us some good views as I fly around. But yeah, it struggles to get up these hills here, and I feel like it should be able to do it a little bit more comfortably, but maybe I'm just overestimating how good a plane with this much power, weighing about, I think it's about 3.5 tons dry, I can't remember exactly, but it's overestimating what that's meant to do. I think maybe, can we tell in here? Maybe? I don't know. You can see it's also pretty cheap to operate at the bottom there, about $13 per hour, which is, you know, not bad at all. That's pretty good. We have two 50 caliber machine guns in the cowling there, one either side of the engine. That would be, from my experience playing War Thunder, very nice to shoot with. So that's I like that. I would personally like that in an aircraft. To be honest, this is kind of how I would like a plane to be if I was playing it in a game like War Thunder. Pretty agile, moderately fast, and the armament is somewhat lackluster, but it's well positioned and with a decent ammo supply. We got 400 rounds per gun, so you're not going to struggle for ammunition in this thing. Let's just put it that way. And they fire pretty quickly with a decent muzzle velocity as well. You can see, yep, that's a 50 cal. Yeah. That's about all there is to say about the armament, to be entirely honest. As you can see, I've not bothered putting landing gear doors on the bottom of this fuselage. I probably could if I really tried, but the way I've constructed this, it was just a real hassle, and I've already spent 2 and a bit days working on this, so I need to move on in my life. It's got to end at some point, and this is it. Well, not quite. You'll see in a minute what I mean by that, but yeah, this is the first model. This is the Kestrel A, as I called it. I'd like to just, you know, pay attention to. I've got a little bit of cowl flappery going on at the front here. That took me quite a long time, and I'm just happy. I'm happy with the fuselage in general. The cockpit, it's not the worst I've ever done, but there's definitely room for improvement there. And I guess what we'll do now is we'll see what it's like to land in this thing, because yeah, that could definitely go horrendously wrong. Build up a little bit of speed in a dive as well, and yeah, I mean, the dive rate isn't spectacular. I think there's quite a lot of parasitic drag on this thing. It is a radial design after all. They're not the most aerodynamically efficient things in the world. I might make an inline version at some point. Obviously, I designed it with a radial. It's been planned with a radial, and I'd have to kind of go back to the drawing board if I wanted to add an inline. But inlines would probably increase the top speed, and yeah, also probably the agility. I'll probably do it at some point, maybe. No promises, though. Okay, we're leading for our landing approach here. We're going to put the flaps all the way out. You can see the flaps are pretty hefty, but yeah, they're not the heftiest you've ever seen. That would probably go to like the Corsair or some of the early jets that the Americans used on their carriers. They really liked their big flaps. But it should be, I think it should be pretty easy to land this thing. I'll tell you now, I've never actually tried. So this is a learning experience for both of us here. The stall speed, it's proving not too bad, actually. I didn't know how that would be, but yeah, we're still not stalled, and we're at like 140, which is quite a comfortable speed. So happy with that, and the brakes are present on the aircraft. They're not particularly powerful. I didn't want to nose over, so I turned the brakes way down, and it turns out I may have turned them down a little bit too much, but I think this should be able to stop us. We've got obviously a little bit of power from the engine still, as that's just the idle throttle, but yeah, we've stopped in the end, and I don't have an opening canopy. I'm sorry, I'm lazy. There you go. And it stalled. Good, I guess. But that's not all. I have designed another version of this thing, which is the B. It's the Kestrel B. This is the Kestrel A. The second one's the Kestrel B. Look, I'm not very inventive, okay? And here is that other version. So you might not immediately see the differences, but trust me, if you go back a couple of seconds and have a look at this thing again, take a screenshot maybe, side by side compare them, then this one is longer. The wings are just a little bit further back, and the cockpit is also a little tiny bit further back, and we've got a much more powerful engine. This is a 9-cylinder as opposed to a 7-cylinder, and it's got a supercharger on it, which means it pumps out, I think, an extra 400 kilowatts of power, which is almost 50% more. Because of that, I nearly forgot my mouse control there. Because of that, it's quite a lot more of a handful on takeoff, just because the propeller is bigger, got more blades, more inertia, more torque. Propeller problems, but you can probably already tell it's a fair bit quicker than the previous one. It doesn't break any records for top speed, and I think that's mostly down to my inability to tune this thing 100%. I've done a bit of tuning, and I think this is pretty good, but there's probably another 50-odd kilometers an hour of top speed in here that somebody who's really, really good with propellers could get out of it, but yeah, that's not me. And with the other one, it's pretty agile as kind of its main thing. It's less agile than the other one. I think when we were pulling a hard turn, we're pulling around 23, 24 degrees a second previously. This is only about 20, 21 degrees per second. It's pretty similar, but yeah, I mean, that's what you get when you get a heavier airframe with a bigger engine, and it's just not going to turn as well. But in terms of other aspects, then this would definitely do a little bit better towards the end of the war. So you can imagine this is kind of 2 or 3 years into the life of the airframe. They've just extended it, basically, and thrown in a newer engine. Typical kind of World War II aircraft life cycle, so I think it kind of makes sense. Yeah, I mean, do you like it? Do you want to see other modifications of this thing, or do you want to modify it yourself? Because it's been a while since I did this, because I have, to be honest, none of my aircraft have particularly sparked joy, but this one feels good, so I am more than happy to give you guys the blueprint for this thing and let you guys have a play with it if you want to. So if I don't do it, please do that thing that you do where you pester me on my Discord in order for me to post the files. There is a channel in my Discord, which is, by the way, in the description, which will just be a zipped version of this. You can put that in your craft file, which is in your app data, local low, StoneX games, Flyout, craft folder. I think that's the path. Either way, you'll be able to find out how you put those craft into your game in my Discord as well. Just ask around. I'm sure someone will tell you the answer. Or I'll remember to put it in the description if I'm being useful, but that's unlikely because I'm not useful. Yeah, but that's pretty much that as far as this thing goes. Oh yeah, 20mm guns rather than 50 cal guns, so fires a little bit slower, similar muzzle velocity, and probably a much better armament if you were playing this thing in a game. Cool. Right, that's that. We're going to land it, and then we'll call it a day. Because, yeah, I want to move on. I've had a lot of fun with this thing, but I gotta do something else with my life. So, yeah. We'll bring it down. This thing probably has a higher stall speed. I haven't actually checked, but I would imagine this is quarter to half a ton heavier, even light than the normal one is, and it carries a little bit more fuel. So, given that we've not flown for very long, it's going to be quite a lot heavier. I guess we're going to stall at about 180, but maybe we stall slower. Maybe that would be nice. And we're all good at 180. We're all good at 160. Think it's going to be about 130 that we're stalling based on that landing, but yeah, I don't know. You can do some science if you particularly feel like it. And there we go. We'll just let the weedy brakes bring us very, very steadily to a stop while I do my little outro. So if you enjoyed this one, please leave a like, comment, and or subscribe. And if you want to see me do something with this fighter, also let me know. I'm a huge fan of this thing, so I'm interested to see if any of you pick this up and decide to modify it. Perhaps someone throws a jet engine on it or something. That would be pretty cool, but obviously no pressure. I just like people doing things with the craft I design. But yeah, I'll stop blabbering on. Bye! And as always, a huge thank you to YouTube super supporters Marlon Gweck, Cruiser25, Cody Fox, Peter Holmes, Peter Seifert, ChemGem135, Stug3, and Terra, and a huge thank you to all of the regular tier supporters as well.